Hi, I'm Doni. I'm Trinidadian Costa Rican.
Hi, I'm Rhonda. I'm Afro-Honduran. And we are your co-hosts for Negra como soy.
Or I am Afro-Latina. Every Tuesday, we'll bring you the insights, perspectives, and history of the African diaspora in Latin America.
To educate, enlighten, and hopefully create a sense of belonging for you, our listeners and viewers.
Negra como soy is brought to you by Cultures, the global multicultural magazine. Cultures celebrates cross-cultural identity because everyone should feel like they matter.
Doni, ¿qué pedo vos?
¿Qué tal, Rhonda? ¿Qué tal?
Todo aquí está bien. Hace calor. El cielo está azul.
Estoy feliz. Estoy muy, muy feliz hoy.
Sí. Y ahorita no estás viajando, estás en casa.
Sí, estás en casa. Ahora. Pero próxima semana.
I know, you're always jet setting.
Sí, where am I going to be? Estoy en Europa.
Vas a estar en...
Sí, Europa
nice.
y... ¿Cómo se dice Asia?
I know the countries. China.
Turquía y África y Sudamérica también.
Qué bueno. How exciting. I want to go jump in one of your maletas and go with you. I'm like, why is this one so heavy?
I was going to say, there's restrictions. You can't come in my suitcase. I'm looking at a new small one. I'm trying to figure out, because for Culture's 5th anniversary, we're doing 5 continents, 5 months, and 15 countries to celebrate. So I have different meetings and interviews all over. And so I'm trying to figure out, because I only ever like going with a carry-on. So I was gonna go and check in a bag this time. However, I think we have an epic photo shoot in Turkey. Oh my gosh, there's some running horses. There'll be some camels, and they're very well taken care of. And there will be some cliffs and balloons and vintage cars and dresses with 100-foot trains. So I'm excited. However, on that trip, on one of the trips, I think, I remember what it is. The timing, I'm 15 minutes shy for switching my plane. And so I don't want to check a bag. So that affects my entire trip, though, because, unless I can't think of a place where I could leave the bag. Anyway, so I usually only like traveling with a carry-on anyway, and I was going to check a bag this time, but I don't think I can. So I got to figure it out, because usually I come home for a few days, switch up clothes, and then go out for a few more months. But this time, it'll be straight.
Do you shop while you're traveling? Is that why?
No, not at all. I'm just a good packer. I'm an expert packer. I am an expert packer. Yes, I usually could get 4 pairs of shoes, and many, many outfits, like probably 4 pairs of pants, 4 pairs of shoes, 4 or 5 dresses, and many outfits and many photo shoots out of a carry-on over the course of a couple of months. But yeah, 5 months is going to be a feat. So, let's see. Which brings us to what we're talking about today, which the clips that we are going to show our audience are so great. And I think the topic is a great one. So you were asking me, basically, when I speak Spanish to people, do they speak English back, right? So the clips, when we play the clips, we'll pause right here to play them.
¿Cómo está, señor? Yo quisiera saber cuánto cuesta esto.
Yes, I don't know.
¿Usted no sabe el precio?
Price here, price there.
Pero usted trabaja aquí, ¿verdad?
Yeah, I'm working here 3 years.
Ok, ¿de dónde usted?
Me from México.
Ok.
Yes.
Pero te estoy hablando español, yo hablo español también.
A little bit Spanish, little bit English, you know?
Ok.
Yes, you know.
Why is it, as an Afro-Latino or Latina, whatever you want to call it, when we speak Spanish to somebody that's Latino and obviously has more European genes in Spanish, why they only want to reply in English? Now, for a fact, when my black ass used to step up to somebody speaking Spanish back in the day or whatever, even sometimes till today, which happens often, who is lighter skinned or whatever, they only reply in English. For example, let's say I would ask somebody where the bathroom is at. Oye, caballero, ¿dónde está el baño? Then they always look at me with this crazy confused look like, and always reply in English. The batro es over. I'll immediately always cut them off and be like, oye, 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 yo no entiendo inglés. Oíste. It'd be so tight. So if this happens to you, make pretend you do not speak English.
They talk to you, or you see in both clips, they said, when you're a darker skinned Latino, whatever, that typically people respond back in English. Now, and you asked me, does this happen to me? Kind of, right? It does happen. Not all the time, but it does happen. And I never saw it in this manner. So these clips and talking to you gave me a different perspective, right? I just, because I was learning Spanish, so that's different. Like if I were fluent and this was happening, I'd be like, what's your problem, right? When I speak fluently, because some days I'm good, other days I'm not so good. Other days, well, it's like English. There's days you struggle to string a sentence together, right? Or I do anyway. But
I do.
but so when it's a day like that, I understand. And typically when I'm really fluent, I'll have to pay better attention because I think when I'm speaking very well, people speak to me in Spanish. And sometimes they want to practice their English. So they'll speak to me in English, but I'll always say to them, that's fine. You can speak English. I'm going to speak Spanish. And so that usually works out, right, for both of us. However, here's what I really got out of those clips. I couldn't tell. Well, both of them seemed like they were both in the United States, right? And
I think so,
yesterday,
yes.
yes, I feel like this is another US thing, right? It comes along with, they were talking about the racism and all that. I think all that comes with it, right? Because, so as you know, my family spans the gamut. We got everybody, right? All the indigenous people and, Latin, Asian, like everything is in my family. And I love it. But I love it. So my sister-in-law's father passed away, and we had a homegoing for him yesterday. He was a legendary Aztec dancer. Oh, that so there were hundreds of dancers at his funeral in full traditional garb with the feathers, and each traje means something, and he was the leader of three different dance groups. He's from Mazatlan, Mexico. And so my sister-in-law said he made each of these trajes by hand and had them blessed, but her mother said that he made a lot of them, but not all of them, right? Because I was like, what? He made all of this by hand? There's hundreds of people here, right? So, but they're beautiful, beautiful. Actually, I'll give you some pictures to put up. Anyway, it was really an interesting experience, especially having been in South America for the last year, because here I am, and first of all, I feel like I was a foot taller than everybody. Even my little brother, I'm taller than him, right? Everybody's like, you're so tall. And then I had on like 5-inch high heels.
Oh my
So
God.
people at the reception were walking up to me like, oh, I noticed you later. And I'm thinking to myself, how could you not notice me? Like, literally, I'm the only dark brown dot in here. My little brother is not very dark. So and I'm like a foot taller. So anyway, so people were, I think they thought they wanted to show how welcoming they were, whatever. They're coming being nice. They're telling me, oh, have food, this and that. So I was walking into the reception, and one of the dancers, I noticed he was a really good dancer. I noticed him at the when he was doing his steps, because some people were messing up the steps. Sidebar, my sister-in-law's mother was telling me how her husband used to hate it when people weren't doing the dances traditionally, and he would grouse that they're messing up the steps or whatever. But I could
Hmm.
notice too, having come from Mexico and really being immersed in those. Not that I know what I'm doing, but it was interesting. I'm like, are those steps right? That doesn't look right. And then some people would run into each other, and they would start. I'm like, I don't think he's doing it right. Anyway, that was a sidebar. But so I noticed this gentleman because he was really really good, and he had a distinctive look too, and he had all white hair and a little white what are those called? I can't remember.
Goatee. A
Yes, thank
goatee.
you.
Hmm.
And so he when I was going into the reception, hello, hello. He's like, oh, everyone, we're downstairs to the right. Um, we're getting ready to eat. The family's eating first, and then we all could sit down. I was like, I'm family. He was like, "Whoa." Right? I was
Oh
like, I'll be eating with them, right? So it was interesting, and that's how the whole day was. People who were trying to be very welcoming and show that they were very open. And someone else came up and said, "Oh, she complimented me," and then she said, I can't remember what she asked me, and I commented back because she also didn't realize I'm with the family. She saw me with them, but I think she thought I was. Oh, I remember because a number of people would say thank you for coming, and I'm like, no, thank you for coming.
yeah.
We appreciate you coming.
Hmm.
And so she would say, so I can't remember what would happen next, but then this particular person was like, oh, those are the words. Oh, no, no. I remember. I explained to her how I was related.
Mm.
Wait, I mean, this is my niece and nephew's grandfather, right? And it's my sister-in-law's father. And they, she was like, "Oh, I know it's difficult using those colonizer words. We're all just family. We don't have to use those words, right?" Or someone else said to me, "Oh, yes, I know, because they colonized your people too. You understand." And I was just looking at her like, okay, right? So where I'm going with this very long story is I really do think it's a US thing because it was especially shocking after having been in South America for the year and not having as I'm not going to say I didn't have any experiences like that because who knows? I don't know if it's because I was learning or because of how I look, but not
Hmm.
having blatant experiences like these. I mean, these were pretty clear, and there
They
were a number
were.
of them in rapid succession.
There were.
And
But
then
I mean,
there's
we've.
Spain. Go ahead.
Mhm. Oh, I was just going to say, but we've talked
No,
about in the past. We talked about our experience in Costa Rica and how the gentleman was like ignoring the fact that I was speaking to him in Spanish, right?
Oh, that's right.
I've been,
That's right.
and there could be an argument, I guess, that it was a touristy area, and so because it's the touristy area, then the assumption is that I'm an American trying to speak Spanish. It could be that, or it could be again that I'm dark skinned because I don't know. But it's happened in Mexico City. It's happened to me. Where else was I? I was in
First of all, I think Mexico is just a little different. Mexico, we
right.
talked
I
about
mean,
this
they don't
earlier.
even acknowledge their own people. Oh, there's no black people here. Like what? You better go to the East Coast, bro, and like check all through here. But like they just what was it 20? It was in the recent 10 years that they finally acknowledged Afro Mexicans. Do you
Yes,
remember
it's
what year that was? It
well,
was recent.
I don't remember, but it is fairly recent. Well, I mean, I feel my personal feeling is that Mexico is very North American. Like, there's a distinct
Fair.
difference to me when I'm in any Mexican state versus Central or South America. The
That's
feeling
fair.
and the people are very very different. But yeah, you're right about that guy in Costa Rica, but that's the only time. I'm trying to think it through. But that's the only time I was with you, so I can't really tell because I seriously was learning, right? But
Yeah.
once I would tell. Oh, no, no, no! I had one other experience. And one other experience
Mm.
in Costa Rica. This gentleman, because was he trying to speak? Yeah, he was speaking English to me, and his English was really good. And I asked him, where did he learn English? And he was like, oh, he went to college in the States and then that. And I don't remember what he did, but whatever he did, I was like, uh, soy costarricense. Right? I'm like, I'm Costa Rican, buddy. Right? Because he was like, oh, I think my Spanish was really good that day. And he was like, how do you know Spanish? And I was like, I'm Costa Rican. And he said, and he looked at me funny. He goes, but you grew up in America, right?
Uh,
And and then we had a whole discussion about it. And so, because he was trying to say, but your accent isn't Costa Rican. So, but his reaction to me wasn't that, oh, you're dark, so you shouldn't speak
mm,
um, Spanish. It was more, okay, I get that. And then he asked me where I'm from. So I do find that depending on the area, like Costa Rica, Limon is where more of the darker people come from. Or even some of the indigenous people in the center of the country versus where we were, as you said, it was more the I, where all the
mhm.
blancos are.
All the Yankees are, right? Because they're all
What'd you
from
say?
coming
What'd you say?
from. I say all the Yankees because they're
Yeah,
coming from Canada and U.S. and wherever
yes.
else to live
Yes,
there.
expat
Yeah.
village, right? And so
And
when I was in Colombia too, it was interesting too. I had this conversation with Hendy, with my conversation, our episode with him, on Destinations with Donnie, in Colombia, and I found that he had more experiences like that versus
mm,
me in Colombia, where people thought I was local, and he was very shocked by that because he doesn't have those experiences. And I don't know if you
hmm
remember, he's from South Africa, right?
I do.
Um, but I was perplexed because people always thought I was local, and they very easily would slip into Spanish if I started speaking Spanish to them, right? A
hmm
number of them actually insisted on speaking Spanish. They didn't want me to speak English, but people did often assume I was from the coast.
hmm
Medellin, where I was a lot of the time, is a very Blanco area. Blanc. Let's see. Argentina. Now, Argentina was was really interesting given their history. Somebody was
hmm
telling me that they worked really hard since the 70s to try to reintegrate, right? Because Argentina
Oh,
pretty much killed their African
good.
and indigenous population because
hmm
they sent them to the front lines in the war of, what was it, 1741? Oh no, the war 1871, I think. Um, and so they they sent them all to the front lines, and most of them died, right? But before that, it was a very integrated place. My understanding
hmm
of the history, and then since 1970, they've been working on that, because a number of people warned me, "Oh, don't go to Argentina; it's very racist," and I did not have that experience at all.
That's
I
good.
even met someone after I came back who was Latina, and she was very white looking, and she had nothing positive to say about Argentina, and she had been there 10
Wow.
years prior, right?
Wow.
So, or 20 years prior. But we talked about a city in Colorado and the difference in how that city had changed in 20 years, and she's like, "Well, I guess you could have a major change." So I'm
Yeah.
going to have to watch. I'm going to have to watch and see
Just pay
now
more
that my Spanish
attention.
is a little. Well, but
Yeah.
keep in mind too, I was learning, so I'm going to assume it's because my Spanish wasn't very good.
Yeah.
But now that definitely yesterday, before we even had the conversation about having this topic, I definitely noticed that I would say something in Spanish, and I'm thinking I said that very properly. They were like, "What? ¿Qué?" Like, they wouldn't even say
hmm
"qué." They would say
Yeah.
"what." I also think it's because a lot of people in the United States who speak Spanish don't necessarily speak, like, they didn't learn book Spanish.
But a lot of times that's not the way it's spoken anyway. Like if I go to Honduras and I'm speaking Spanish, I don't have that issue. People respond to me because they assume, oh, she's
Mm,
from here. You know what I mean?
mm,
Or they know my family already, so they know, she's from here, kind of thing. But my accent is there as well. You know what I mean?
mm,
Um, so I don't have that issue. And I will also say that in Brazil, where there's a lot more um, African based, diasporic presence, no one ever questioned me speaking Portuguese. In fact, it was the opposite. I don't remember if I talked to you about the story where I was talking, I'm in the store, I'm shopping, and then I wanted to buy an umbrella, but I didn't know the Portuguese name for umbrella because it had never come up in conversation. right?
Yes.
And so I was
Yeah.
like, what do you call the thing that you put up when it's raining? And of course, I talk with my hands, so I'm saying this in Portuguese. What do you call the thing? Como se chama a coisa quando está chovendo que põe assim em cima? And the guy is looking at me, and he was like, "Are you stupid or something?" And I was like, "No, but I don't know the word, right?" And at this point, I haven't connected yet that he thinks I should know the word because he thinks I'm Brazilian,
Local.
right? And I was like, no, I was like, I just don't know the word for that. And he's looking, and I was like, I said, I'm American. And then his whole face looked shocked. He was like, and then he was so happy to like teach me the word. And how long have you been speaking Portuguese? You don't even have an accent. But said, no, tem sotaque. Oh, like he's just, oh my gosh, I would have never known. And I was
Yeah.
like, that was so rude though. But anyway, like in those are the only two places where I've not had that occasion. And beyond that, those two videos are like a small, tiny sampling. You can find so many other videos of people traveling other places and speaking, and they're native to whichever South or Central American country. I'm going to keep saying that because you and I both acknowledge that there's Central America, right? So from Central or South American countries that are traveling up to other Spanish-speaking places, and people are looking all like they're seeing an alien. Like, how are you talking to me in this language? And
Go ahead.
oh, just the final thing is like you never get that with English, and so that is what frustrates me. You don't find it strange that this dark-skinned person is speaking English, right? Because your skin is black, so you.
So,
But Spanish is confusing. Like, English is not a native language of any country that I know of in Africa unless it has been colonized. So why is it so confusing that I'm speaking a European language other than English?
so when I was in Portugal, I don't know. I'm really gonna have to watch because as you're talking, I'm flashing through all these experiences, and most of mine are not that way. We will see. I know when I was in Portugal, they would ask, what language do you speak or where are you from?
Mm.
Because in Portugal, it's Portuguese, which by the way, it's so funny. I know Portuguese is supposed to be like Spanish. It sounds like Russian to me. I'm like, I don't know what you're saying. And when I speak Spanish to people in Portugal, I don't know how they know what I'm saying.
But that might be Portuguese. Like if you heard Portuguese from Brazil, it might sound more similar to you. In the same way
Well,
that hearing Spain from Spanish sounds so different from over here.
that's true because I'll
Yeah.
tell you that I did meet a Brazilian in Portugal, and he was like, I can't understand. Like I don't even like it's too difficult for me, so I speak English. That's why my language is Portuguese.
No, I believe you. I believe you. I met a woman from Portugal and we were speaking, and she explained to me some of the differences in pronunciation from the Brazilian Portuguese and the way that I was speaking to her way of speaking. She was like, I understand you because I know a lot of Brazilians.
Well, you know what? It's interesting what you just said about Spain Spanish too, because I found I had an easy time in Spain. Actually, in Argentina as well. I had the easiest time speaking in Spain and Argentina, and I thought it was going to be difficult because one of my Spanish classes is an Argentine Spanish class, and I was kind of upset once I got into the class and realized I'm like, you should tell people. I mean, they tell you it's Argentine Spanish, but I was a newbie. I didn't realize that that was going to be different than other places. So I'm learning Mexican Spanish, and so some of the words are different, and of course the pronunciation is different. And I was like, oh, I have enough to keep track of. I don't want to have to learn that. Even though I did, I mean, it was a point of mine was to know and learn the different dialects. Though I find that I default often to the Medellin way of speaking, Medellin, not Medellin, Medellin way of speaking. And so anyway, but I digress. So I really was surprised when I got to Argentina how well they understood me and how well I understood them. And but Spain was even easier. Do not ask me why. Maybe it's because it's book Spanish. I do not know,
I
but
would say.
I that because it was book Spanish.
I mean, it's kind of like
Well,
if you learn from an old English textbook, right? Because we speak American, right? We're speaking American, not English, right? So if you learn English from an old
well, but I mean,
English
no, because I
textbook,
grew up in Trinidad, and Trinidad speaks British
well,
English
that's
with
true.
an
That's true.
accent.
But if you were to learn from an old English textbook, you're
That's a
still
little far. That's a little far because people in Spain understood me now.
well because you were learning the textbook Spanish is
But
what
that's
I'm
what I'm
saying.
saying.
So
I'm just saying the old English example might be a little too far away, but I do get
to
what you're saying.
American English, I think there's a similarity there that it would be closer to British English than
Yeah,
what.
but Old English isn't British English. Old English is something neither one of us,
No, no,
British
no,
or
not Old English, an older English textbook. Like because now our
oh,
modern
oh,
English
when you said Old English, I thought you
no,
meant
no,
OLE,
no,
like
no, no, no,
OLE.
no, 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 not Old English, but an older English textbook. Before all of the modern changes and intricacies. I mean, in the past 10 years, how much has our English changed here?
Oh
It
my
would be
God.
totally different. But yes, Old English would be
Yes,
something
yes, yes.
else.
So yeah,
Come
no, I
hither
agree.
and all that.
Yes, yes, yeah. Old, come all you faithful. I don't know. Whatever.
Thou shalt not. Yeah. No, no, I
No,
wasn't
I
going there
I
though.
agree
But
with you 100%. So Spain was very easy, but and that's one of the reasons I'm doing the travel and liking the travel so that I learn how people speak every day. Because even as you
mhm.
say in English, there's so many things we say that I'm like, man, someone learning this language would not understand what the
So
heck we're
confused.
saying, right? Like
Or
it's
be
just
so confused.
or even the slang that we come up with from I mean, craziness. But to the topic
Hmm.
though, I'll really have to watch now that I'm getting better, because I just think through, and I find it interesting too in the two examples that we showed, the accent of the person speaking English. Like
Hmm.
clearly their English is not that great. You want to speak to me in English? I was, like the one
Hmm.
lady said, I'm speaking to you in perfect Spanish, and you're trying to speak English, and the guy's like, English, Spanish, a little bit of English, a little bit of Spanish. But
It's
I
so
also think
crazy.
based on me learning Spanish and actually, okay, I'll give you an example. Translating songs, okay? And my friends from different places in the United States, some of who come straight from Mexico or Colombia or whatever, versus the ones who grew up here and learned from their parents or learned from their community, they don't
Hmm.
translate things the same. I'm sitting here
No.
wondering how people even communicate because my friend from El Salvador, we were taught, you asked me how was the concert. I went to the Maluma concert in Spain and it was excellent. And he has the song, Felices los Cuatro. And I remember in Mexico when I was saying the words as they say it in the song, my friend in Mexico was like, no, 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 that's not how you say it. That's not how you say it. But I'm like, but this song says it this way. Is he singing it that way? She explained it completely differently. Then I asked my teacher. My teacher said something different. Then my friend, when we were at the concert, her translation of the song is completely different than my other two friends who, before I knew Spanish, would tell me what it said and what my
Hmm.
teacher said and what I know Spanish to be and looking at the words. And I'm like, I don't know how any of y'all could communicate because you're translating the same words differently.
I think you have to take in account that like sometimes things are more idioms and then how do people receive or what's the messaging
Yes.
different people get from
Yes.
idioms. And then also like a lot of times, especially like me as as a first generation American with a parent that is foreign, a lot of times I had to grow up kind of putting together from context clues what's being said. And so maybe I
Yes.
didn't know individual
But
words
isn't that
without it being in a
Spanish
certain phrasing.
anyway? I mean, I feel
Yeah.
that that's a lot of Spanish. It's really about how
Hmm.
you emphasize the words and how you say things, and
And
that
what
is
you say it with.
yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah. So and so I recognize now as I'm older, and I think I shared with you that experience where the Brazilian woman who considered herself white, but if you and I looked at her, like she didn't look like she was from Europe, right? But she
Right.
considered herself white, and she was telling me that the way that I learned Portuguese within the capoeira community was like this gutter or street or just ugly version of the language, right?
She had some
So,
personal issues.
but that kind of like being able to take that information and go back in my mind to experiences that I've had
Yeah.
speaking Spanish, then I'm like, well, maybe my Spanish that I've learned from my family sounds ghetto. Like
Mm,
just to make use a simple term, right? Maybe it sounds in a way that is like that I'm ignorant or that I'm uneducated, and for that, maybe that's part of the reason people are like, oh, I don't want to hear how she's talking. Let me
mm,
talk to her in English. You know what I mean?
well,
That could be something too.
well, and I see that too with friends of mine who they're illiterate in Spanish, right? They speak
Mm-hmm.
fluently, but they can't write or whatever. And of course, I'm better writing and reading than I am speaking. I'm still learning the speaking part, as we
Mm-hmm.
say. Some days are better than others. But I did, in the two examples, I find it interesting. I do still think I'm not going to say it doesn't happen other places.
Mm-hmm.
I, based on my experience, I feel like it happens more in North America because,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, we North Americans are different. and
Like,
and I feel like especially a lot of Latinos in America, hey, none of us can escape it. We are swimming in that sea of isms every day,
mm-hmm.
ableism, racism, all the things. And as much as we'd like to think that we're above it, especially if we experience it, we're not.
Mm-hmm.
And then we perpetuate it because that's the society we live in. That's what we've learned, and sometimes we don't even know that we're doing it. So, um, yeah, it's interesting to hear. I'm sitting here imagining that clip that we played. The other thing that happened to me. This was funny in Costa Rica. This was American. So this guy's from Puerto Rico. He's American, and I was out with he and his girlfriend, and he's older and he's a teacher, and so I was asking the waiter for something, and the waiter didn't understand me at first. So then I went to repeat it, and the gentleman was like, "Oh, what are you trying to say?" And then I just waved him off because you were there. You had that conversation with me where I'm like, "Look, I'm gonna keep speaking to you in Spanish. You could ask me whatever you want, or I don't need your help or whatever." So
Mm-hmm.
I kept speaking to this waiter in Spanish. He understood, everything was great, and then he left. And so then I turned because I realized like it might have come off as kind of rude that I was like, no, no, I'm good or whatever. And I can't remember what I said to the gentleman, but come to find out, Rhonda, he speaks no Spanish.
So
Really?
how was he gonna help you? What was he gonna?
I mean, this is my
Oh my
question.
goodness.
I was like, and I was sitting here thinking I was the one being rude, but he was ready to assist. He
And
was ready.
and doesn't even speak the language. But here's my thing. Back to the like that it's a North American thing. That still does not explain when the person that you're speaking to has just immigrated. Their English is not good. So they're not immersed in this American culture. They've come from somewhere else. They should be welcoming of the fact that someone's speaking in their tongue as well. But instead, they
I'm
insist upon, I'm not going to acknowledge that you're speaking Spanish because I don't know. I don't know what you're, I
I'm
don't know
gonna
what you're
say
doing.
my thought on that. First of all, I do, again, I'm not gonna say it doesn't happen other places. I think it does. In my experience, it's been a lot less than here, right? However, again, back to the immersion thing, I find, it's so interesting, especially Mexico, like you were saying how, oh, Mexico just now acknowledged its Afro-Latinos. But I find there's, especially in Colorado, because in Colorado there's a huge Mexican population, right?
Hmm.
That they're more accepting. Not everybody, of course. None of the things we're saying are universal, but they're
Right.
more
Nothing's
accepting of
blanket.
the Black community because I think from back in the day, it was like, oh, well, we're one because they see us together, right? I'm trying to
Hmm.
remember what story I saw. It was in San Francisco, and I can't remember what it was, but both of the people, one was a Black woman, and the man, I'm trying to remember what he was, if it was an ethnicity, maybe he was Jewish, I can't remember. But he was talking about basically that the part of the bond was that they were similarly discriminated against, right?
Hmm.
But then
Yeah, and a
in
lot
his
of those
lifetime,
movements.
yes. And in his lifetime, though, it switched where society then tried to pull you apart. Like, because if we look at history, poor whites and blacks used to also have a bond, right?
Hmm.
And then over time, it's like, oh, no, no, no. Let's manipulate this and let you, Mr. White Man, realize that you're actually better than that black person. So then that bond started to break because it's
Hmm.
like, oh, well, I'm a step above you. I don't need to, I'm not going to be your friend. I feel
Hmm.
like when people come to the United States, they immediately see that there's a difference, or try some of them try to separate themselves or whatever the case may be. I still feel like those people, again, not 100%, because I'm not going to say it's not in South
Yeah.
America, because it definitely is. I mean, there was racism in South America. There's lots to talk about, but it's so hard because people's individual experiences are so different. We were just talking about Garifuna on a few of our segments, and Sasimo was basically saying it's up to us to make our destiny, I guess, to look for our future, to not take what's been given to us and just accept that, right?
Hmm.
And I can't put my finger on why it's different for some people, but I do notice that depending on where you go, people just have different experiences. Like I could go somewhere and like people are just mean to me. I'm like, I don't like it here. Right? Then you have a great experience in that country, right? Or in that place or in that store or whatever. And I've always wondered why that is. And I don't know why. We also spoke about with him how we have our ancestral memory, and sometimes we have
Hmm.
ties to a place. So it doesn't, I also believe that it doesn't matter how we look. If we have ties to that place and we go back, I feel like we're immediately accepted, right? And
Hmm.
so then that will change my experience versus yours, even though we look similar. You know what I mean?
Hmm. Yes.
I don't know. Here's what I could commit to. Now that I can speak Spanish a little better, I will pay better attention and try to see if when I speak English, someone is ignoring me. It hasn't happened, or not ignoring me, but ignoring my Spanish when I speak
Hmm.
Spanish. Um, Usually, when I
And we can
insist,
ask them too.
ask
Go ahead.
them, "What do you mean?"
We can ask questions like that one guy was saying when he was saying pretend that you don't speak English and just keep
Oh,
insisting that you speak Spanish. Be like, ¿por qué no me entiendes? ¿Por
did
qué me
I
sigues respondiendo en inglés? No entiendo inglés. And just make them be like, I don't. You can say it in English all you want. I don't understand. No.
Oh my God. Did I tell you about this story when I was in Buenos Aires, and this, because there, they let people come into the restaurants, and because there's all these outdoor restaurants, and like beg, right? And ask you for money and ask you whatever. This
Hmm.
woman walked up and she pulled up her shirt and she had this huge tumor. I thought she was pregnant before she pulled up her shirt. And she was asking me I don't remember what she was asking me, but I put my hand up, and then she's like, no entendió, no entiendes, and she walked off muttering to herself, thinking I couldn't understand her. Like, I don't know why these people come to this country and they don't speak the language. Da, da, da. And I was like, look, you want looking for money. You ain't even, if you want to keep making those assumptions, go right ahead, right?
Oh
So I
man.
did actually. I had that happen twice in Buenos Aires. Both of them were the same day. That woman was one, and at an exchange place. And I wonder if part of the reason this doesn't happen to me, because the only place it happened, I don't want to sound stereotypical, but I have to admit this is where it happened. It was more less educated people in service positions were the ones who did that to me. And
Mm.
usually when I'm traveling, I'm not in that circle, so I haven't had that experience. But I did notice it that day.
Hmm.
And when I went to the change place to get money, man, that woman pissed me off. And I wanted to go off so badly, but I was like, I don't want her to keep my cash, so I'm just gonna, but she was bad. She was terrible.
And
I'm like, I'm saying perfect words, and she would send her boss, and her boss would come over and talk to me, and I would say the same words I just said to her, and then she would repeat the words back to her.
Like, oh my God. And you know what? That could be the key, Donnie. It could be that you travel with these people that are very learned, that are more affluent, that have traveled. And so they recognize that anywhere you go in the world, you'll see the same peoples, right? You'll see dark skinned
Right.
people, you'll see more people that look like they're from somewhere in Asia. Like, you'll see all of these different complexions, and you know that people can move freely throughout the world. And if
Right.
you're someone that's stuck in one place, then you're kind of in that box that I've talked about, where you're trained that I'm supposed to see this person in this place, and this is how they talk and dress, and this is what activities they're doing. And if you don't
Yes.
fit that, then people are confused. And so maybe it's like, maybe it's that, like,
Well,
well,
and it's the same for the
you're not
US. If
supposed to
you
be.
think of the people in the US who get upset that, oh, you're in the US, speak English, or,
Hmm.
why don't you know language, things like that. It's not people necessarily, not again, not 100%, but
Right,
for the
right.
most part, it's not people who speak other languages and
That have
travel.
traveled. Hmm.
Exactly. Right?
Yeah,
Because my first thing, when you want to say something about someone who has a thick accent, is like, oh, how many languages do you speak? How many did you
exactly.
learn for you to have an attitude about this person? Because they can speak something else and you can't.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Have a
Oh, tú
little
no me
compassion.
entiendes. Okay, let me speak in your language for you, okay? Like, that's two.
Oh my gosh. So maybe that's the key. Now
Hmm.
that I think about it, that very much, oh, those two women in Buenos Aires, I mean, it was such a shock too, because everywhere else I went, I had such wonderful experiences. But that day
Hmm.
back to back, the two of them, but
Hmm.
I really think it was more a reflection of them and
Hmm.
what they know and don't know and how learned they are and how they see the world than of me
Hmm.
and what I was doing, right? So
Yeah,
yeah, that's so funny. And I can't
yeah.
see y'all are lucky. I can't be like to see those two clips we played. Their Spanish accent is fantastic. I clearly sound American.
Yeah. Ah. Yeah, well, I'm
Uh,
glad we got to a space where we can kind of start with trying to make sense of it, and look at it from that
I know,
standpoint.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that
yeah,
feels
yeah.
good.
I mean, there is going to be racism, but it's interesting. A lot of it probably is, dare I say, classism, right? Was
Hmm.
it classism or class
No,
or just
yeah,
experience?
classism. Yeah, yeah, which
So
is a whole different show, but that it is tragic as well, because that comes from a place of hurt and a place of internalizing
yes,
that oppression, and the harm that's done, and
yes,
accepting it, and not wanting to, but having the feelings that come with accepting
yes. So awesome. Thank you.
it.
It was another
Yeah, it
a nice
was.
chat. It's like therapy, these chats.
It is. I love it so much. Thank you. Ciao.
Adios.